And thus, Parliament has completed its work on the establishment of portfolio committees this week following the appointment of cabinet members earlier in the week. Parties are now expected to appoint and assign members to the existing committees, including the Judicial Services Commission. The Judicial Services Commission is the only parliamentary structure made up of some non-parliamentary members who form part of the composition, such as lawyers, academics, and judges. Often they are referred to as commissioners instead of just members. Judicial reform is an ongoing task in South Africa's 30-year-old democracy that the JSC bears responsibility for. This becomes increasingly pronounced in the 7th administration. Alison Tilley of Judges Matter joins me to unpack this further. Alison, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Welcome to The Full View. Perhaps give us the full view on this. What is the crucial work that the Judicial Services Commission has to start off with? We heard work about judicial governance and the restructuring thereof, that if you listened to Judge Meyer's interview during the Judicial Services Commission interview, that was one of the big discussing points. But also the expansion of the Judicial Conduct Commission and the work they ought to be doing in processing conduct complaints. Walk us through some of the key line items that the Judicial Services Commission will have to focus on.
Well, I think we need to just distinguish between all the various commissions and committees. The Justice Committee in Parliament is the one that's responsible for legislation and oversight. So they have a role, and then the Judicial Services Commission is involved in appointing judges. One thing I think that they both agree on is that the conduct processes, which involve disciplining judges, holding judges accountable, are too slow. And that's something now that the JSC, Judicial Services Commission, is recommending to Parliament, and it would then be the Justice Committee, the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, that would have to amend that legislation so that there are more judges who are able to deal with conduct matters, these matters involving accountability. The other area you mentioned, which the Deputy Chief Justice went into at some length, is this whole question of, well, who's really in charge of all of this? And she says that there should be a judiciary-led administration. Right now, there's a lot more in the Department of Justice than perhaps she would like. And that's something that ultimately the Portfolio Committee, as the committee that passes legislation, that's what they're going to have to grapple with in order to make that law.
Let's double click into that. The new Minister of Justice is Thembi Simelane, formerly known as Thembi Nkadimeng. Minister Simelane is the first justice minister in the country that is not a lawyer, but she spent the better part of the last 20 years litigating against the state and the NPA for injustice, particularly pertaining to the death of an apartheid death pertaining to her sister, Nokuthula Simelane. Many says that she understands intimately the frustrations of justice, access to justice, and the justice system in South Africa, that her outsider's view into reform could be exactly the catalyst needed for justice reform in South Africa. Talk to us about some of the policy hot potatoes that need to be dealt with when it comes to the Minister of Justice and concomitantly the Committee of Justice in Parliament, especially pertaining to budget allocation.
I think one of the first things that she's going to find on her desk is the Public Protector's report, which has just been released, and it deals with gender-based violence in the courts. But what it does do is it gives us a detailed description of about 39 courts, and it says that 38 of them are not fit for purpose. And it goes into a great deal of detail as to why that's so. And some of it is things like photocopiers that are broken. Some of it is no internet connection. Some of it is the court building itself. I mean, there are court buildings which have to be condemned because they're no longer safe to use. So this is a backlog in terms of maintenance. It's in terms of making sure that administrators have the tools of trade. And it seems as though, and certainly our research would back this up, that it's something that's prevalent in many, many courts across the whole country. So I think, given that she has the Public Protector's ordered remedial action, and the Department of Justice is going to act on that remedial action, that's something that I think, it's certainly going to be one of the first things that she'll want to pay attention to. Super important for access to justice, to be able to literally, walk into a courtroom where, there's running water and electricity.
Alison, thank you so much for your time this evening. I really do appreciate it. Alison Tilley was a coordinator at Judges Matter.